These Theta II 2.4 Hyundai engines love to fail. Now this engine is out of this Hyundai Sonata Hybrid 2012 with only 173,000 kilometers on it, and it's already got a hole in the engine. Yep, check it out. There's a hole in the engine. You can even see there's some fragments sitting around here from something exiting there. The owner had to drain out all the oil from this engine because it was just spewing it across the driveway. Now I did use this engine to drive this car into this driveway, so it technically was still working, but it's not seized yet. Now this is the hybrid version of this engine, so we do have a starter alternator generator assembly here with its own pulleys, and the belt is blown, and we do have an electric AC compressor. Also around here the starter hole is just a blank, and we do have this flywheel that'll connect to the transmission because there's a motor situated between the two. So let's get to tearing this thing down to see why it failed with the car in the backdrop there. Alright, we'll start at the top here by removing the ignition coils. He actually gets ignition coils from Denso, which is pretty nice. I'm going to test my patience again and slowly take off this wiring harness real quick. See if we got all of the connectors disconnected and remove this engine harness. Next up, I'm going to remove the valve cover. Now I should be able to get this valve cover up and out. Looking under this valve cover, it's plastic like so many other valve covers nowadays. The seal itself is pliable because this is a mid-mileage engine. Inside of there is the oil cap, and then in behind here is an entire diaphragm system that controls this PCV valve that sits up here. It's cool that they made it clicky like a gas cap. Now taking a look under the hood of the Theta engine. Now this was co-developed with the Chrysler World engine and also has some similarities with the Mitsubishi version. Those engines are actually doing a lot better in terms of reliability. However, this engine is fairly simple in the setup with dual overhead cams. We do have a cam on bucket design here, which is very simple, which means that you don't have roller rocker arms or any VTEC or lift system to deal with, and you have these cam caps here that are held on by these 10mm bolts. The cam position sensors are at the back here. Now given that shrapnel pushed out of the engine, I'm assuming there was an oil related failure, as they are with all of these, but I don't notice too much wear on those cam caps. There is a little bit. Now the hybrid version of this engine has port injection only, which is great because you don't have to deal with the consequences of direct injection clogging up your intake valves. This is the fuel rail where the fuel directly bolts up to here, and we have the 4 injectors that go into the air stream into the engine, not directly into the head. All 4 injectors came with it. Now I'm going to unbolt the intake plenum. Okay, got it. It was just hanging up on the dipstick tube here. I'll pull that out. Have a knock sensor to remove here. Now I can remove this intake. Take a look at how clean those valves are, and that's because of port injection. You see these ports are actually kind of square shaped, interesting, but what's more interesting is this gaping hole inside of the engine here and this piece of connecting rod that popped out, as well as some aluminum chunks. Now remember, that correlates to cylinder number 3. This motor generator is pretty interesting because it's got a tight belt system over here, because not only does it actually take torque from the crankshaft to charge the battery, but it's also got to provide torque to that crankshaft when you want to start the engine. However, when I was driving this thing off the trailer, this belt broke and a whole bunch of smoke started coming out, but the engine was still able to start using the motor inside of the transmission. So I'm assuming that both of them are used to start and generate electricity for this thing to run. Now this motor generator has 2 coolant lines, kind of like those BMW Alternator, some control electronics, as well as high voltage that goes in here and splits off to the AC compressor down below. See if you can use the 14 here and rattle this guy off. This side here we got to take off this engine mount. Then there's a little 12 here. Whoa! Okay, that was very heavy. Stay tuned because I'll be tearing this down in the hybrid system teardown on this car, so we'll save that for that. At the bottom here we have the AC compressor. Whoa, that's heavy too. That's got an electric motor. We'll do a separate video on that. Oh, a little assistant is here. Anyways, here we've got a dual tensioner assembly that both squishes this belt together. So you got lots of tension on there, so you can transfer torque and receive torque to both generate and start the engine. There we go. That is one interesting tensioner assembly. There you go! Yes, there you go. See if this dipstick will come out. Nah, this is pretty stuck in there. Take a look at that belt. My guess is that this engine was probably trying to seize up because of no oil. There's a knocking issue, and it just frayed this belt. There was a whole set of smoke that came out. Interesting that they made the water pump at the back here stretch belt. More typical that they use electric water pumps on hybrids now, not an actual belt. Water pump seems a little less chunky. Take off these bolts on the pulley. This looks like they use a thinner wheel here, and the same water pump. Take off the water pump. Hyundai's green coolant. What happens when you don't drain the block before you pull the motor? Water pump removal device here. There we go. Nice steel water pump with an aluminum housing. No plastic here. Pull off this water pump housing with this crossover tube. Okay, a little bit more coolant. Now the back of the engine we have a coolant manifold, and I don't like that it's made of plastic, but that's the way these engines are going nowadays. Let's remove the thermostat. Thermostat housing is made of plastic. Thermostat itself, thank God, it's still an old school thermostat. There's no electronic valves, so it should be pretty easy to bleed. Essentially, we've got hot coolant coming into the head here. It's going to go out to the upper radiator hose to get cooled down. The thermostat connects to the lower radiator hose, and then at the back here we do have our hookups for the heater core. So let's remove this from the engine head. Okay, let's pull this off. It's all plastic. I don't like plastic because it could expand and crack with the heat cycling. The next dilemma is to get this crank bolt off. I guarantee you it's not coming off with my little 1/2 inch impact. It actually came off. Damn, I was planning a big expedition to get this off. You don't need a puller to get this off. It's a sliding fit, and it has a little keyway here, unlike Fords that don't have anything and it's not timed properly. So now I'm going to work on removing all the 10s and 12s from this timing cover, and this is where it pays off to have 2 separate guns with separate sockets. And there we have it. Timing system on a Theta II engine. So far the design of this engine is actually not bad. There's no oil galleys running through the timing cover that could cause leaks, and everything's kind of self-contained here with a hydraulically actuated timing chain tensioner. We do have plastic guides, which I don't really like. A nice single chain that runs to both camshafts and then down to the crankshaft, and a separate chain at the bottom here that goes to the oil pump. Let's slack off these cams while we got some tension on there. Let's remove this timing chain tensioner. The hydraulically powered tensioner. You can see it just fully expanded when I took it off, which means that the timing was in pretty good tension. Actually not in bad shape. Again, I was expecting a lot more wear in this engine, even though it's a mid-mileage engine, due to it having maybe a lubrication failure. I like that they're all using 10s. There's no torques or anything in here. Kind of makes it boring sometimes. This feels kind of chinsy and very light, but there's no wear on it. Let's get the chain off over here. Now, this is a very thin chain. You could probably wear this around your neck or something. Pull off this crank gear, that's just keyed. Pull off the intake and exhaust sides. Now these are both variable valve timing gears, so if you want to learn about how that works, make sure you check the link above. Back up at the top here, let's get these cams off. Pull this guy off, and this intake camshaft off. I just turned this engine over and it looks like something like a wrist pin came out. These are usually pretty strong, but it's intact, so I wonder what the damage is like inside. Hyundai's taking one from the Germans and using a triple square head for the head bolts. This is an M12. Here, I'm going to zip these bolts off. There we go. So 4-cylinder engines work by putting the 2 middle cylinders in time with each other and the 2 outer cylinders in time with each other, which is clearly not the case here. Cylinder number 3 is stuck at top dead center. You can see all of the carbon that was supposed to be built up. You can see over here, like these other ones, have been shined off because it made contact with the head. And more than likely, if I press down with my special tool here, that piston is loose. There's no connecting rod behind it. That's not good. So let's turn this over and take a look at the bottom end. A bunch of oil's coming out of that dipstick, and this is what happens when you trust the previous owner when they say that they drained it all. I didn't get any out of the drain hole though, so I wonder if it's clogged. Try to turn this over and make some more mess. Whoa, there's much more oil than I expected. Now the oil pans on these are stamped steel, very simple, cheap and easy to replace. Now before I take that off, I got a couple of 12-point socket 12mm to take off of the back here. And then 2 more around the front here. And then the rest should be all 10mm going around. There we go. Alright, let's see what surprise awaits in the bottom end here. Oh, we got some glitter. And look at the glitter inside of here. Now this is my wife's old toothbrush, and it's probably seen more lip gloss and lip glitter than anything else. So it's the ultimate test. You can see just how much of that stuff is inside of here. You can imagine it floating around in the oil, how shiny it would be. That's all bearing material for you. Looking under here, this contraption is a balance shaft assembly over on this side and an oil pump assembly over on this side. It's kind of interesting because balance shafts are typically to make the engine smoother, and this is kind of more of an economy car, which is great that they've integrated that. Over on this side, it does mean more complexity because you have a chain tensioner to make this nice and tight. If it was just an oil pump, they'd probably just put a spring tensioner on there. Now these are also held in by 12-point sockets. I'm going to remove these slides. Plastic slides. Alright, let's see if I can get this off together so an E22 Torx fits. Alright, so I've jammed this balance shaft. Let's see if I can knock this free. I wonder if this is reverse threaded. Yes, it is reverse threaded. So much grief. I can pull off oil pump and balance shaft assembly. See if it's got any particles in here. Anybody ever take off an oil filter with an impact? Guess the impact vibrates too much. Gotta go around and remove these 12-point 12mm bolts. oil pan removal tool here. One of these flywheel bolts stripped, and that's why it's still attached to the crankshaft, and I have to shim it up to put it on the engine stand. It's now causing a clearance issue because the rear main seal sits in a cavity. It's kind of stuck in there, so I'm just gonna have to try my luck. Alright, I used this long bar and was able to pry it up. Where did the connecting rod go? This actually feels kind of seized up. I mean, we've got the piston top down there. We saw chunks of it outside the engine through that exit port that you see there, but this engine pretty much blew up. Now, it always did turn over. When I took it out of the car, it was free to turn over, so it was never seized up, but this connecting rod bearing, at least, is pretty seized up on the crankshaft. That's probably what caused that belt to break. You can see the head here for this guy is sheared off, so that's one less bolt that I have to deal with. Connecting rod bolts are a 10 mil 12-point socket. Pull off these connecting rod caps. Oh yeah, you could see they are not in good condition at all. Ah, this one unseized itself and it's rolled over on itself. Yep, this spun rod bearing. Let's use my oil pan removal tool here. There we go. Alright, taking a look at the connecting rod bearings, that's the ultimate failure in this engine. Cylinder number 1 and 2 are pretty rough and they fared pretty badly. Number 4 does not even want to be in this chat. Number 3 is where the main failure occurred, and that's the connecting rod that blew up. You can see there's actually 2 halves here that kind of rolled over on itself. Essentially, there's supposed to be 2 halves, one on each side, and it kind of just rolled over on itself and seized itself to the crankshaft. Number 4 was also seized to the crankshaft, but it didn't roll over. But damn, you can see it was pretty mangled up. So that's not good, and this definitely indicates a lubrication system failure. Now, why does this happen so often in Hyundai and Kia engines? Well, the things you're going to hear out there are that, yeah, Hyundai and Kia owners are not very diligent with oil changes or even checking their oil, but moreover, the engine itself is not even diligent with keeping its oil, and it tends to burn oil. Now, one reason these connecting rods get damaged so quickly is because debris was left in the engine during manufacturing. Hyundai had a recall on this, and if you're in the 10-year mark, you can actually get your engine replaced for free. Just make sure you check that with the dealership. Apparently, there's a long line for these engines, and even used engines are pretty expensive. Now, the sad part is the Theta II has been out for a very long time, and it took them at least 10 years to react by issuing a recall and to admit that there was a manufacturing defect. Now, a big lesson learned is when you do machine work, you gotta clean out all the debris inside of there before you put stuff like this back together, because there's supposed to be just a thin oil layer, and that's all that keeps metal to metal contact. Once you start to grind these out, well, the day's done and you won't keep oil pressure, and then you start to starve the engine of oil, and it just gets worse and worse. Now, you probably heard this engine run in my previous post where it was knocking real hard, and that's because you've got 2 connecting rods on one side and no connecting rod bearings on the other side. So there's a big clearance over there, and that's why as this is going up and down, it just goes knock, 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 knock. Now, eventually this is going to seize to the crankshaft as it did, and once it's seized, the rest of the engine still wants to go. Something has to break, and then out goes your connecting rod through that inspection window. Now, the sad thing is that this could actually be avoided by simply checking your oil very frequently. These engines like to burn oil, and when they do, they burn it really fast. And once the oil light comes on, well, it's too late, buddy. You've already lost oil pressure and done damage to your connecting rod bearings. So at that point, might as well start saving up for an LS swap or something. I mean, yeah, sounds weird, but on a hybrid, that wouldn't be too bad of a project. Imagine a hybrid LS. Alrighty, moment of truth. Let's take a look at these bearings. These are actually the 2 worst ones. Now, main bearings don't go as bad as fast as connecting rod bearings because they're closer to the oil supply line, which we'll see later when we take this apart. Truth of the moment, see if I can lift this crankshaft out of here with this big heavy weight on it. Here's piston number 3, or what's left of it. What did piston number 3 do that deserved this? Really short. Actually, there's a chunk missing. It should actually be this long. The rest of this compressed and blew out the block. The rest of the piston itself, well, the skirt is also damaged as well. You can imagine from the debris flying around with this failure happening all of a sudden. The previous owner said it just died on his driveway. It stopped working. Now, I've complained about this before. Modern engines are moving to low tension oil rings here, which you can see tend to clog up a lot faster as this piston is moving down. Instead of the oil being drained through that ring down into the sump, the oil gets left on the top here, and then it just ends up getting burned, and the owner doesn't know anything that's going on, and you eventually starve the engine of oil. Now, because this piston no longer had any connection, its momentum would have caused it to smack the head, and that's why you can see these clean spots around here. Now, from a design perspective, most of this engine actually seems well built. It's just that the way they manufactured it and some of the cost-cutting things like oil rings to improve fuel economy are really what led to the detriment. Bear with me as I try to take this heavy thing off the stand. It's not just a block, it has a big heavy flywheel on it. There we go. Oh, it's heavy. Now, I haven't had my dinner yet, and I don't have enough strength to take this out. Now, the reason why they use the giant flywheel at the back here is because this is a hybrid system, so it's got to keep its momentum going. There's no clutch and there's no torque converter in this transmission. Now the reason why I'm going through all the struggle is because that one bolt there stripped out because my wife came and decided to talk to me. I got all the rest out though, but it's kind of sad that I can't get that out without a welder. Anyways, I'm really here to inspect the damage that that connecting rod made, and you can see it made a channel inside of that block there as it exited out and just created a big wound on the outside of the engine here, and that's where all the oil was leaking on the driveway from. Now you can imagine these pistons have a lot of momentum moving at thousands of RPM, so this poking a hole through a cast aluminum block is not really much. Taking a look at the lubrication system, oil is going to get sucked up through this oil screen here, which is surprisingly clean. There's no debris in there, and then it's going to make its way through this pump into this hole over here, which then goes into the upper oil pan. Now the upper oil pan is going to take oil through this galley down to the oil filter to get filtered out, and then into the block through this hole here. Now that filter oil is then going to come through this hole here and connect to this galley that runs along the length of the block sideways. That's going to connect these sprayers over here, which are going to line the cylinder walls with oil to help cool and lubricate them. You can see this one's actually knocked off where the damage was, and these main bearings here also tap into that galley to lubricate the crankshaft and the connecting rod bearings. Pull off the head gasket from the head there. Taking a look at this head here, you can see this is colored different, and that's because this piston whacked this head here from going at really high speed, and that took off all the carbon from the piston as well as on the top of the head here. What I find interesting is that the combustion chamber itself, where it didn't get hit, is also a different color. It seems like dust or something was building up here, as this is basically an air pump as it's sucking in air but not burning the fuel because there's no piston to push it out. Now, as expected, the cooling system on this is very simple. It's just an open deck design here that allows coolant to go all the way through. There's no crossover passages or anything interesting. This is the oil galley that's going to feed the head for the variable valve timing and lubrication. Now the top of the head here is pretty interesting. We've got these two holes here and here for the advance and retard on the variable valve timing, as well as the oil control valves on the top and the bottom here for the intake and exhaust respectively. I do appreciate design for being very straightforward. And let's look at the Theta II engine. Now from a design perspective, things look pretty simple. However, from a manufacturing perspective, things are not that great. Hyundai did extend the warranty on this, but if I were you, I'd probably look into doing a case swap because the rest of the car isn't too bad overall. Someone should really make a kit to case swap these, and you could probably sell a lot, because these and any other Hyundai with a 2.4 tend to blow a lot. And stay tuned for the rest of the hybrid system teardown.